Hello, welcome everyone. I am Gabriella Taylor, and today we have a very special treat. We're going to be having a conversation that goes far beyond business, far beyond traditional strategy. We're going to be talking about the things that are at the very core of so many women's lives: money, power, and higher purpose. And let's face it, we live in a world that tells us that how to be successful, what standards of success look like out in the sort of man-made realities that we've constructed. However, our world has not really taught us what it's like to feel successful, to embody success, which comes from within. And if you hear me stumbling a little bit, I had some dental surgery, and so I have a new retainer in. So just full disclosure, my tongue is still getting used to the appliance.
I love the authenticity.
And so we're here to really explore, like, what does it mean to embody a sense of power when we're coming out of a world that has told us as women that we're not powerful? So the question that we're going to be sitting with today is, what does it really mean for a woman to truly stand in her power, her ability to create wealth, to fulfill her purpose, and contribute to a world that works for everyone? And with that, to explore this, I have invited somebody that I am quickly falling in love with, just in terms of the shared commitment that we hold in each of our hearts. So, who we have today is Sage Lavine. She has dedicated her life to helping women rise through her being a #1 best-selling author of Women Rocking Business. She's the CEO of Women Rocking Business Training Company. And Sage has empowered over 500,000 women entrepreneurs globally to build thriving businesses aligned with feminine values like collaboration and generosity. I mean, how extraordinary. So cutting edge. Sage has been a keynote speaker and TEDx presenter. She has shared stages with thought leaders like Neil Donald Walsh, with Jack Canfield. She's been featured in Inc. magazine, on CBS and ABC, and we're going to be seeing so much of her because she is on fire. So in the best way ever. Through her programs, Sage fosters entrepreneurship as a path to closing the pay gap and creating global change, raising over $1 million for women's humanitarian projects worldwide so far. So this isn't just an interview, it's really an invitation for us all here to unlearn, to rethink, and to reclaim the parts of ourselves that we've been told are too much or we can't or not enough. And Sage, I'm just thrilled to be here with you today. Thank you.
The feeling is so mutual. Thank you for standing for women. Thank you for helping us rise and radiate. And I'm just excited to be here with every single one of you.
Beautiful. So let's dive in, shall we? I've got a couple of juicy questions for us, and then we'll go off course if that's where we want to go. So, but let's start with you. You were a teacher in your former life, yet you're still actually a teacher, and you teach women in really powerful ways to align business with purpose. Yet we recognize that so many of us women, we walk around with these conflicts about money, charging, selling for our services, earning money, receiving money. And what was the moment when you realized your own beliefs about money were holding you back? And more specifically, what did it take emotionally, mentally, behaviorally for you to shift into a place of true power and abundance?
Mhm. Oh gosh, so many moments. I could tell you so many stories. It's a big ongoing process of growing and unpacking as we create our own success, as we learn how to ask for the sale, as we learn how to value this gift that's inside of us that is intangible. Many of us want to give our gifts whether we got paid or not. And as you mentioned, I was a school teacher and I come from a long line of school teachers: mom, grandpa, great grandma, auntie, all school teachers. And so when I was a little girl, my mom didn't want me selling Girl Scout cookies because she was afraid I would offend the neighbors. Like that's how anti-salesy, right? My educational family was. And so to become an entrepreneur was kind of like to move to Mars in my family. And so they didn't really get it at first. And I was very quickly up against all the feelings of unworthiness, fear of abandoning my family, fear of outshining, because as I even started to have a little bit of success, I was afraid I'd leave people behind as a woman with school teacher values. And like, let's just give a shout out to school teachers. Like, thank you if you are a school teacher, if you know a school teacher, if you love a school teacher, right? And all of that came up. And I was being called. There was something bigger in me calling me. And for many of you, I'm sure you can relate to this. We're living at a time where we can't just sit on that calling and continue to thrive. It's a time where we are collectively being called to answer the call of our calling. And so, as I stepped away from school teaching, I had to get really resourceful because I had never learned about marketing before. I had never learned about getting out there and asking for the sale before. But yet I had this background in women's empowerment training and women's leadership training, and one of my college degrees, and I was a wilderness guide for women. And so it was like I knew I had to do it. I got resourceful. I moved into my grandfather's RV to start my business. I started my RV with a hand-me-down laptop that a friend had given me that was so slow. In the winter, I remember cutting the tips off of the fingers of an old pair of gloves so I could get my fingers to work on the laptop.
Wow.
And to my surprise, my feeling of unworthiness and feeling like I was going to abandon people if I got successful didn't actually dictate where I ended up. Even though I was crying myself to sleep at night and wondering where the heck to begin, I just didn't give up. And I just kept trying, and I just kept listening, and I didn't stop my meditation practice, and I didn't stop my morning ritual, and I just kept doing things in the way that I wanted to do them, even though I saw all these marketers doing it a different way. And to my surprise, week by week and month by month, I actually didn't fail. It actually started to work. And I got my first client, and then my first 3 clients, and then my first 1,000 clients. And what I started to learn was that the more I tried to be like everyone else, it would slow down. And the more I learned from what other people were doing, but I stayed myself, it started to take off quickly. And I hosted my first coming out event. It was called Women on Purpose online. And we had 5,000 women register. And I made $102,000 in 5 days. And as a school teacher, that was like mind blowing, right? Like it would take me 3 years to even make that much money. I figured I don't have to work anymore. I'm probably done, right? And then, of course, everything starts catching up with itself. But what I will say to every single one of you listening is if there is something tapping you on the shoulder, if there is something calling you, if you keep putting one foot after the other, you actually can't not fail. Like you can't actually fail. Like I've been doing this for 12 years. Like every single woman that I have mentored or that has come into our world, if they keep going, they have success. I've seen it every single time. Now, if they stop or quit, then sure, it doesn't always pan out. But I wish that younger version of me sitting in the RV would have known that. But I know that now. And what I want to say to every single one of you is there is a life waiting for you that you only dream about. And I don't live in the RV. I live in a gorgeous beach house next to the Santa Cruz Bay. And I wake up every morning with my puppy, and I have this extraordinary network of colleagues and friends. And I love my life. And I travel around first class to India and Uganda to meet the girls that we've been able to sponsor through philanthropic projects. And I lead retreats in Maui and Sedona. And if you had told me when I was a school teacher that I'd be living this life, I would have thought you were absolutely batshit crazy. Excuse my trucker's mouth. But for those of you that were teachers, you understand sometimes those words have to come out of our mouths. But what I want to say to you one more time is everything's possible. And you've got to keep giving to yourself so that we can give to the world. And I think that's the balance that we're embarking upon.
Mm. There's so much in here that you're sharing, and thank you just for sharing your early experiences because I really hear the theme of being true to yourself. And for each one of us, like, right, we have these adaptive voices of the world that we inherited through the teachers in your family or the world around us. Like we all have these adaptive voices that whisper in our ear telling us things about what we can't or what we shouldn't or be careful. And then we have this authentic voice that's just calling us forward. And I really I admire the strength and the clarity of that authentic voice in you that just kept rising in you and continues to rise in you. And it reminds me of when similar, I didn't grow up in money at all. I got my first job at 8 years old. I was like with a paper route and left home at 14 and all of these things. And I had come back, it was right before Y2K, and I came back to living in San Francisco after I had been on a pilgrimage around the world, 37 countries for years, living this very spiritually guided path and also doing a lot of radical, transformational consciousness raising work, which now I would never do. No, no. But anyways, living in San Francisco, coaching, loving it, feeling on purpose, had no idea how to make money. So I would do it like love offering or, bring me a thing of kale or, a bundle of flowers that they picked on the way. And I
Will
would
coach for kale.
Will coach for Cal. And it was one of these moments where I met a woman that had a coaching program, and her annual program was something like $60,000. It was more than my salary, my annual salary at that time. And I've got $26 in the bank and like no equity, no stocks, no family to go to, like literally $26. How am I going to pay rent? And I'm like, Gabriella, that voice in me was like, this is the time. This is the time to demonstrate to ourselves that there is a life possible available for us outside of this glass ceiling of living under just getting by. And so I borrowed $100. It was May, and her program started in September. And I borrowed $100 for the application process. And I got busy. You know what I got busy with was T. Harv Eker's Millionaire. Do you remember that? The Millionaire,
Totally.
whatever it was.
Yeah, millionaire mind. I don't
And
know. I
that was my first deep dive into my relationship with money. And I saw myself working with her. I had no idea how to go from coaching for kale to like, earning what I needed to pay in full in September. And wouldn't you know it? Because I was so committed. I saw myself there. I was committed to my breakthrough. Out of the blue, as these things happen, I get a phone call, and it's a company that's wanting to bring me in to do some coaching in-house. And it was like a $200,000 contract. At that time, I had never seen money like that. And wouldn't you know, I did her program and the rest is history. So I really hear you about that place inside of each one of us. We're either going to stay in the cocoon in which was given to us, or we are going to answer the call and also take responsibility for where we're not responsible for the conditioning that we came in with, but we are responsible for changing it. So thank you for such a resonant story. And so I'm curious, in your work with so many female entrepreneurs, I mean, like 500,000 women and like counting, what would you say are some of the subtle ways that you've seen women unconsciously giving their power away, especially around money, leadership, and even more? Can you think about a time where you caught yourself doing this in your life and became more conscious of it and it really changed something in you? What's this been like for you?
I love hearing about more about your journey. And like you, I spent over a year traveling around the world with a backpack, just really trying to get a handle on my own value after college. And so I love some of the synergies and the women that have found their way into this event, right? Just like the search and the journey that we've all been on, the Shiro's journey. There's three things I've really discovered on my journey of mentoring women that come up, that are three of the top things that come up, I think, when we're up against our own limits around money and valuing ourselves. And the first one I was mentioning before is just a general sense of unworthiness. I can't do it. Gabriella's way prettier than I am. Her hair is way longer. She's got bigger eyes, right? Like we're comparing, we feel unworthy, just straight up not good enough. If you're taking notes, maybe jot that down, like just general unworthiness. The second one is
I
this
love the
sense of,
teacher in you. I love the teacher in
here
you.
I go.
Say it again.
The second one is
Take notes.
this sense of outshining, which also is abandonment, right?
Yes.
Like, I'm afraid I'll be too shiny, too successful, leave people behind. They're going to abandon me or I'm going to abandon them. And we need each other, right? So it's another big one that comes up, like the tall poppy syndrome in Australia. Like, if I grow too tall, they're just going to snip me down. The third one is the burden of success, the fear of success. Like, if I get successful, then I'm going to have all this responsibility. And what if I end up in body breakdown? And, all of the reality that comes with taking yourself on and squaring your shoulders and facing the world and saying, this is what I want. And of course, there's others, but those are three that I've seen rise to the top like many, many times, again and again in my work with women. And one of the moments that I was up against this within myself, you asked me about that, was my first big opportunity to take the stage. So we help women use speaking to build their businesses. And I had an opportunity to speak at this 2,000 person event. And I was one of two women, maybe a dozen male speakers. I was also the new kid on the block. So I was terrified. I had to have a booth, which I had never done before. And like just big opportunity for me, like big door open. Like, we want you to come speak, host a booth, do all the things. And it's one of those events where you do your like 2-minute pitch on stage, and then people choose to come to your breakout room.
Oh gosh.
So I had all this resistance to doing it, but I've really been living by one of my own affirmations is resistance unfailingly points true north, right? Mm-hmm. Which is War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, if you haven't read it. Mm-hmm. Great read, just all about resistance. So there I go to the event, grab one of my teammates, and we've never done a booth before. So we get together once a year with the women who are studying at Women Rocking Business in a conference center by the beach in Santa Cruz. And we train for 3 days how to build a 6-figure business. And then halfway through the conference, we go down onto the beach, we stand in a circle. It's a feminine symbol, and we hold hands, we lock our dreams into place. So I have these incredible photos of the sun rising and the sun setting and 400 women standing in a beach circle. And I decide that's the image I should put on a banner, right? I'm going to sponsor this event. So I've got my banner, I've got the beach circle, I've got my dark chocolate, I've got my beautiful, tablecloth from Thailand. Like, I don't know how to do a booth. So I roll in, I'm feeling all good about myself. And like, these men come in and they've got semi trucks and they bring out their like huge, like 10 by 16 foot screens and the scaffolding and the music and the lights and the disco balls. And they're like in their polo shirts and they're all branded. And they're like setting up these big flashy things. And I'm like sitting there with my booth and like, I'm getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Oh my gosh. And I feel like a total failure. Like, I can't even believe I showed up here. And like, I wanted to like unzip the floor and like crawl inside it and like watch the carpet just like cover over my head. And my heart's racing and I'm like, oh, this is going to be my biggest failure. And I'm going to have to go back and I'll probably be a substitute teacher. And nobody's probably going to want to hire me as a substitute teacher because everybody's probably going to hear about what a complete idiot I was at this event. And I'm standing there trying to hold it together. And we're about ready to go do our 2-minute pitch on stage to invite people to our breakout. And my book had just come out and I was really struggling with like, how much to say on stage and how real I wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And one of the polo shirt guys comes up to me from his big flashing booth. And he says, he looks at the sign of the women entrepreneurs in the circle, in the sunset. And then he looks at the dark chocolate and he says, what are you, like a kumbaya business? I was mortified, Gabriella. Like, my career was over. Like, okay. So I just look at him. I'm sure I turned beet red. I literally turned on my heels and I waltzed over into the women's bathroom and I sobbed, pulled myself together. I had to be on stage in like 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I had a memory in that bathroom. And the memory was of a time when I was in high school and I was bullied by these 3 girls month after month after month. And they chased me down in the hallway one day and locked me in this locker and left me in that locker for almost 2 hours until a janitor discovered me. And I was in that bathroom after the Kumbaya comment, And I'm literally like convulsing. I'm like,
Mhm. Mhm.
I can either use this moment as a moment to be done with my career and shrink and get small, or
Mhm.
I can use this as a breakthrough moment.
Mhm.
And I went back to that teenager in that locker room in that moment, and I looked in the mirror and I looked in her eyes and I said, that moment,
Mhm.
that moment of sitting in that locker
Mhm.
brought me to a place where I know so many women are locked in metaphorical lockers
Mhm.
and we cannot stay there anymore.
Mhm.
And if I hadn't had that experience of being so painfully excluded,
Mhm.
I would not understand how to build a multi-million dollar community of hundreds of thousands of women where inclusion is one of our primary values.
Yes.
And I made $1 million at that event
Mhm.
in 3 days, the
Mhm.
one where those women are standing in those circles.
Mhm.
And I looked in the mirror and I said, Sage, you've got something to say on that stage. And your only way through this is to get on that stage and be completely who you are. And if
Mhm.
it doesn't work, go somewhere else where you can be completely who you are, because that's why you're building this business, not to build another job. Like, you
Mhm.
actually want a place where you can be fully expressed. So
Mhm.
I'll never forget the energy that started to come up through me and pump in that bathroom. And I went backstage and we're standing in a line full of, speakers who are giving their 2-minute pitch, and Mr. Kumbaya is like standing in front of me, like looking back at me and practically breathing down my neck. And he gets on stage and he does his little 2-minute thing, and people seem pretty excited. So at this point, I think
Mhm.
might as well just seriously unleash myself. And I
Mhm.
got on that stage
Mhm.
and I told that audience of almost 2,000 people that in my past, I had been bullied, I had been locked in a locker, and that I knew each of them had been through something themselves.
Mhm.
And that it was time for us to use our lives as a PhD program, preparing us for that which we are here to bring now. And
Mhm.
that each one of us has been through unspeakable things. And we
Mhm.
can't even compare what I've been through versus what you've been through. We have to stop being robots and start being humans and claim the thing that's calling us forward now. And I told them, I invited them to come to my breakout so I could show them how I was able to take the stage, become a best-selling Hay House author, build a multi-million dollar company. At that point, I think we had just hit almost 2 million.
Mhm.
And Gabriella, we had standing room only in our breakout.
Mhm. Mhm.
And Mr. Kumbaya was in the breakout room next to me, and
Mhm.
less than half his room was full.
Mhm. Mhm.
It was just life changing for me, because I had been on so many panels and in so many situations where I was the only woman,
Mhm.
and I wanted those guys to like me.
Mhm.
And so I shrunk.
Yes.
And in that moment, I did the opposite.
Mhm.
And what I want to say to every single one of you is, you're going to do it your way. And
Mhm.
that's what your people need, especially with the rise of AI. We
Mhm.
need your authenticity now more than ever. We need Gabriella, who comes on her
Mhm.
incredible interview series that's going to reach tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of women, and tell us that she just had an appliance put in her mouth from a dental procedure. We need that. How many of you loved Gabriella more when she said that?
Mhm.
Like, we need that level of human realness. Like,
Mhm.
look at who's popping up as our
Mhm.
sheroes that we're following. Brene Brown, Mel Robbins. I mean,
Mhm.
right? We're watching these women get on and be so real, and they need us to step up right behind them. Like, they're carving out a path for you and I to get out there and be more authentic than we've ever been, and the world needs us. What
Mhm.
do we want to show our daughters? What do we want to show our sons? Right? Not
Mhm.
some perfectly put together thing that everybody's measuring themselves against.
Mhm. Mhm. This is so powerful. And I mean, this is one of the inspirations for when I began this interview series, was to pull the curtain back to recognize that every single woman that we see and respect has had to overcome profoundly hard things. The hard might be financial insecurities. The hard might be overcoming the impacts of abuse and how that might create legitimate fear from stepping up. The hard might be being bullied and having the pushback from others that have harmed us for speaking up and speaking out. So I truly appreciate your story, because that's where I see where we can find ourselves with one another, inside of one another. And there's so much that I love about your story. story, even like I sort of listened through different hats. I listened through the neuropsychology hat of what was happening in your brain during that time in the bathroom with them in the bathroom. And then also I listened under the minister in me hat in terms of the clearly your soul's calling is to transcend and rise, like all of us. And clearly there's enough of you alive, awake, and aware that can help the parts of you that are still continuing to rise up. We all, it's never ending. We all have parts of us that feel uncertain or insecure. And no matter what our growth edge is, there's always going to be something there that needs compassion. But I really love that because what I'm in the very unsexy term of memory reconsolidation, which is literally, I mean, literally, can we rebrand that? But that is the new science that we're discovering, which tells us how to unlock where these old emotionally embedded memories live in our subcortical brain and that we can actually open them. Like this is revolutionary because for psychology was built upon this idea that once it goes in, it's a fixed network that the best we can do is build some skills of mindfulness or positive self-talk around it. But when that actual memory of being bullied goes in, and then the core belief that comes up as a result of it, that there's nothing we can do. But now we can actually open it. And we have a 5 hour window to give it this juxtaposing experience. And so I love what I was hearing was that your this neural network woke up of being bullied. And oh my God, all of the feelings and memories and in that locker. But then spontaneously, something extraordinary also woke up in your brain to input this new experience that gave you life force energy and vitality and clarity and literally created a breakthrough not only in your brain, but also in your life, given that that was such a breakthrough experience. So I just, that was such an elegant story of memory reconsolidation in real time.
I
So,
love the psychological part of you. I just
mm,
love it. It's like, let's unpack what we're actually
yeah.
doing. And you're going to help so many women with this series and just putting that together. And, you know, the moment that, right, that the polo shirt guy came over at the end of our breakouts and, you know, he just kind of looked at me and looked at how full my room was.
Mhm,
And I looked at him and I let him have my moment. And I
mhm.
said, you know, maybe you should try a little more kumbaya sometime. And he just,
So good.
and you know, he just gave me that look. And you know, regardless of what our corrective experience is, I think what you're pointing us to, Gabriella, is like every single one of you has the opportunity to go out and build yourself a corrective experience,
Mhm.
you
Yes.
know, and it can look so many different ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that every single one of us carry scars inside of life experiences that have told us that we can't or we're unworthy. And every single one of us have the healing balm, the healing salve. And it no one is exempt. And so I just really appreciate the us more and more recognizing that we are truly all in this together. And by tending to the hurts that we carry, I love the metaphor of how we're all born with a wound and all born with a genius. And the process of becoming is learning to tend to our wounds from the gifts of our genius. And your example in that bathroom was like your genius rising up to help the
Yeah.
wounded one, like
Yeah.
come a little closer into a safe space of beingness and
Mhm.
with this compassion and also ferocity.
Mhm.
So let's talk about money for a second
Okay, let's do
for
it.
a few minutes, okay? Because this is a big part of it. Like when we're talking about women, power, business, especially existing entrepreneurs or emerging entrepreneurs, money is part of the equation. And we all have a money story. No, and look, I did a case study where I interviewed women. I did 200 hours of interviews of women that had net worths of 50 million to 50 billion. They may have a lot of money, but they do not often have power. And so I just want to speak to my background was like, I didn't have $26 to my name at one point.
Mhm.
But no matter how much money we might have, our relationship to power and a sense of being settled in being empowered financially, emotionally, psychologically, it's different from the numbers we have in the bank. And so, we often hear a lot that money is energy, but for so many women, it's actually tied to legitimate fear, scarcity, memories or times in the life where things didn't go so well around money, shame. So if you personally, if you think back, because you're such a great storyteller, if you think back to a specific moment when maybe you confronted one of your own money wounds, how did that look or what did that feel like for you and what helped you break through? And maybe how is that showing up now? I'm curious.
Mhm. It's such a great question. And I think there's several places to look. And um, for me personally, because I was raised in such a school teacher consciousness, it was like mind blowing to even think about having millions of dollars in the bank or running a big organization. And for those of us that are on that path of becoming financially empowered,
Mhm.
I think the reality is we've got to remember where we came from. It wasn't until 1974 that women actually were able to legally open a bank account without a man co-signing. My mom married my father, and when she did, my grandfather took a folder full of her paperwork, her social security cards, her bank account paperwork, and my grandfather gave my father this envelope and said, "She's yours now."
Mm.
So that's just my mom, right? So I think it's easy for us to, like, we look out in the world, we see a lot of examples of financially successful women. I think
Mhm.
it's easy for us to forget that it was like, it just was not, it was like yesterday that a
Mhm.
lot of our mothers just didn't even have the basic rights that we have now.
Yeah.
And so that's still in us to some degree as we all keep working with what it is to get out there and grow businesses or think differently. And meanwhile, some of us are up against like some pretty real financial circumstances.
Mhm.
And for me, especially in the beginning when I was sitting in that RV, I'll just go back there because that's the time that comes up. I quickly went into debt because I didn't know how to find customers and clients online. Nobody had ever taught me how to do that. I wasn't very techy, and so tens of thousands of dollars of debt was accumulating for the first time. I had always been somebody that didn't believe in using credit cards, but I started using credit cards like you to hire mentors.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there was a way that I had to take on more financial responsibility to
Mhm.
punch through my own upper limit.
Mhm.
Because if we're going to grow our ability to acquire money and then use that money to do good, we're going to hit up against an upper ceiling.
Mhm.
And so when we're thinking about the unworthiness, the fear of abandonment, the burden of success, there's always a few things I like to say. We've got to co-regulate to be able to self-regulate.
Mhm.
Like Gabriella is saying, we have to do this together. I could not agree more.
Mhm.
Gabriella and I can't remember how long we spent on our first phone call just getting to know each other, but it was like the women's way is collaborative. Like we all come from a mother, like we are that belly to belly, like we grow humans in our womb. So we understand collaboration, and collaboration is the new way. It is what's going to get us out of so many of the imbalances and the social craziness, the socioeconomic like convulsing that the world is doing. Like we can see the way women have the answers. And so it's no longer a time when just a few women need to step up. It's
Mhm.
actually a time when we all need to step up. We all need to reach out before we have the breakdown. We
Mhm.
need to, have a handful of women who are on speed dial in our phone. We need to reach out earlier and be hiring the mentors and make sure that we have a small group of women who have earned the right. Brene Brown says they have done the ETR. They have earned the right to support you. These are not the naysayers. They're not the women that are playing it safe and stuck in mediocrity and complacency. There is something so powerful when we all decide we're going to go together. And that allows us to stop being afraid of what other people think because we have gathered our allies. Nobody does it alone. Women try so hard to be independent, and it makes so much sense why we would think, okay, I'm just going to go be independent then because all that other crap isn't working.
Mhm.
But we've forgotten that there's this thing called interdependency. We're
Mhm.
so afraid to be codependent because we've done codependency. We just go ahead and get independent, and we're on that healthy psychological spectrum of trying something new. But I've seen it so often where women start becoming the lone wolf and they're the smartest person in the room over and over and over again.
Mhm.
And I think it's coming home to that sense of interdependency
Mhm.
and co-regulation
Mhm.
so that we can find our way up into that next level of success and stop worrying about what people think. I love what Madonna says
Mhm.
about people judging you. You know, many of us are so afraid
Mhm.
that we're going to be judged. And Madonna says the more judged you are, the more money you make.
Mhm.
She's like out there with her little cone boobs, right? And yeah, I'll leave it
Mhm.
there.
Yeah. I mean, that is so, and even when I hear that, it's like we have to, money for the most part is an exchange of a service, which requires other. So to me, there's even the deep healing that's happening through this co-regulation and the expanding not only our capacity to receive the support that you need, because I am a huge advocate of investing in mentors and guides. Like I always have for myself two coaches, a therapist, like I am always getting support because our shared friend Claire Zammit likes to say, we cannot become ourselves by ourselves. So there's this piece that I'm really hearing of like there is something about taking a stand for that which is coming alive in us and where we invest in ourselves and where we invest in ourselves getting the support that we need behind us. My hands are kind of going, I'm like thinking of all the women that stand with me and just behind me, lifting me up and that I give my life force energy to, and also my financial energy to. And then there's this exchange when we are indeed selling a service or enrolling someone into our program or selling our good or whatever it is, that there is this exchange where we need other. And so I really, I can't agree more with the healing that comes through this lone wolfing, which really is just a form of protection. And so this piece of investing in ourselves and also standing in the truth of what we offer, no matter what it is, matters. And if it's something that we seek to like create financial livelihood from, fantastic. There is so much money on this planet, and particularly given that there's up to $70 trillion that are coming into American women's hands through the Great Wealth Transfer
Mhm,
in the
mhm.
next 10 years, we are really being tasked to break these lack and scarcity patterns where we can be really cheap in ourselves and not invest in ourselves, but fritter it away all out here. So I really appreciate this piece around how co-regulation leads to self-regulation. Again, that's a fantastic neuroscience truth, and it's a very true tribal truth in terms of us mammals. So in the spirit of that, like you have built a thriving community of female entrepreneurs. You are my go-to that I refer any woman that I come across that is an emerging entrepreneur, a budding coach, like Sage, you are the one that I didn't know if you knew that, but I have been funneling women to you since I came across since I discovered you through our beautiful friend Julie several years ago. And I have been feeding women your way because you're the new model of where we're going in terms of women in business. And I say that with great sincerity. And because of this, you have built this thriving community of female entrepreneurs. And what role do you see sisterhood plays in our growth, not only our financial success and growth, but also the sense of personal growth, us becoming more wholehearted women that are alive and bright and resourced so we can help this world that is in rapid change. How do you experience that?
Mm.
And how do you deal with the comparison and competition that can happen in sisterhood?
You're like the queen of asking a lot of really deep, incredible questions all at once.
Oh my
Um,
God. Guilty, guilty, guilty.
oh my God, I love you. I love you for that. Um, there's this like OG story of the crabs in a pot.
Mm,
And over the years, there have been spiritual teachers that have likened women to crabs in a pot.
mm,
And there's been spiritual teachers that have noticed that a lot of the sort of big breakthroughs that happen in the financial world, even in the yoga world, even in the meditation world, a lot of the first yoga teachers that really came online in a big way were men. Iyengar, when we look at Eastern traditions, spiritual teachers, Wayne Dyer, right? Like we like a lot of those first breakthrough teachers are men, not women. And I've heard the spiritual teachers like asked, well, why isn't it more women? And
mhm,
I've heard the metaphor likened to, well, women can be like crabs in a pot. When you put a pot of crabs on the stove to boil, if one crab gets its leg over the edge of the pot to escape the pot, the other crabs will just pull that crab
mm,
back down into the pot.
mhm,
And when I first heard that story, I was like a little bit rocked by it because I could remember all the times in my life that women have cut me down a few notches. And even though it was like the men in polo shirts at that event where I spoke at, it actually was the women before them that gave me the wound. And I know we all have different experiences of our relationship with women over the years, but most of the women that I've worked with have somewhere along the line where they didn't feel uplifted by women. And what I know we're moving into is a world where we're collectively looking out and going, oh, we have to use our superpower. We have to use the sisterhood. We have to realize that we actually have a cooperative advantage to men and we have to use it to our favor. And gone is the time of like the one guru, right? Like now it's like, gee, you are you and we are we. And we have to get out there and we have to be the women who hook our legs over the edge of the pot and chuck other women out of the pot. And that's what I see Gabriella doing. That's what I see my friend Marcy Scheimoff doing, who is a shared friend of Gabriella and mine, where we are out there uplifting as many women as we can. And that becomes the new currency and that becomes the new safety net. And the bottom line is that many of us are afraid of getting successful because it just feels scary. It feels vulnerable. Feels like we're going to be responsible for a lot of things. But what I want to speak to in terms of the power of collaboration and sisterhood is that let's just be honest, we're safer. The more money we have, the more success we have, the more strong and successful people we have like in our Rolodex, like that actually creates more safety.
Yes.
And so I want to invite you to breathe that in as you're thinking about going out there to create your next level of success. Success is safe. Like it will create more of a barricade of safety around you than anything else you've ever experienced. It has for me, it has for all my clients that have made it into the multi 6 and 7 and even 8-figure businesses. It is create more rather than less safety. And you and I, like we are going to be like women are part of this great wealth transfer. Women are going to manage and be in control of 2/3 of the world's wealth by 2030. And so that is happening with or without us. And so if you're being called to be a part of that, the time is now. Yeah, like just straight up, the time is now.
The time is now. I know we're going to be wrapping up here, but I just want to reinforce the significance of what you just said about this crab theory, because yes, while statistics show us that workplace harassment is worst amongst women, we have to recognize that the patriarchy has shaped every single one of us to turn against ourselves and each other. And I believe that part of the deeper work that we're looking at right now is how have we internalized sexism, all of the things that we're fighting against to change out here, but to really look at how has the Western feminine psyche created this fracture that has taught us, because we live in a world where the feminine is less than, we're forced to back ourselves into a corner and overcorrect in one way or another, and it might be pulling other women down. And it lives in every single one of us. And to me, this is the same conversation that I have with women that I work with, that bring me into the White House, to leading philanthropists in this country. It's like until we look at how does this thing exist inside of me where I am undermining myself and gossiping about my girlfriends, my sisters, and letting others speak poorly to me, until we do this work internally, there's not going to be sustainable change out here. So I really deeply resonate with the need for us women to look at how we've been shaped to be these crab pullers and how we can lift each other up. Sage, this has just been such a gorgeous. I am deeply impressed with your ability, your wonderful stories. You tell the most wonderful stories that are filled with so much truth and resonance. And so I just want to thank you for being here with us. And I just want to invite everyone let's just take a breath for a moment, because I know if you're anything like me, this conversation has probably stirred something in you. So let's just take a moment to acknowledge that there has been some really extraordinary wisdom that has been shared here. And so I just want to thank you, Sage, for being with us. And if you're watching this, what my hope for you is to walk away with this recognition that you are not here to play small, and you were born for this time. And while there may be a lot going against us right now, There is so much going for us. And may this be a lift in your step. And Sage, thank you so much for being here with us today.
You're so welcome. It's such an honor. And just to keep encouraging every single one of you to take that next step, the clarity that you're seeking, it comes from taking action.
Mhm.
So keep going. It's all happening.
And
It's all
and
waiting for
under
you.
and forgive me for interrupting. We'll post how to get in touch with Sage below, but is there anything that you would like us to know before we wrap up as to what you would like our listeners to be aware of as to how they can
Mm.
get in touch with you?
Tune in. We do events every couple of months here at Women Rocking Business. We do trainings that you can jump into, and it would be our honor to support you to get clear on your message, your gift for the world, how to monetize it, how to take the stage, how to speak up, how to get visible. And I really know that without a shadow of a doubt, every dream comes with its own infinite supply, and it truly is waiting for you. It's
Mm.
not just waiting for someone kind of like you, it's actually waiting for you with your unique set of life experiences. So keep going, and thank you for being a powerful woman on a mission.
Mm. Gorgeous, gorgeous.